Confrontation is one of the truest tests of who we are. It comes in many forms: a raised voice, an accusation, an insult, a challenge. But the moment it arrives, most people surrender before the first word is spoken. They allow anger, fear, or pride to dictate their response. And in that surrender, they lose not only the situation but themselves. The truth is, calmness is not something reserved for the fortunate or the naturally composed. Calmness is a skill, a choice, and a form of strength that can be trained, mastered, and wielded at will. It begins with recognizing that the real battle is not with the person across from you. It is within your own mind and body. Most people believe that calmness is a personality trait. They look at composed individuals and think they are naturally calm. I am not. This is a lie the mind tells to justify reaction. Calmness is not inherited, it is practiced. It is the discipline to pause, to observe, to choose clarity over impulse, and to respond with precision rather than emotion. It is the understanding that every reaction is a choice and that losing control is never inevitable. The foundation of calmness lies in awareness, noticing your heart racing, your jaw tightening, your thoughts spinning, and taking conscious steps to regain control. When you master yourself, no provocation can dominate you. The first and most accessible tool in maintaining calm is your breath. Breath is more than air. It is the bridge between the body and mind. When anger or fear arises, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, escalating tension. By taking deliberate, deep breaths, inhaling through the nose, letting your abdomen expand, holding briefly, and exhaling slowly, you send signals to your nervous system that you are in control. Breath anchors you to the present, slows the body's instinctive reaction, and clears the mind. It is a weapon that is always with you, and when mastered, it allows you to remain grounded even as chaos swirls around you. Observation is the next step. Do not react. Watch. Most people respond before they understand what is happening. They listen to respond, not to comprehend, and their impulsive actions escalate conflict. By observing, you create space between stimulus and response. Notice the other person's tone, posture, and micro expressions. Listen not only to the words, but to the emotions behind them. Observe your own internal reactions. The tightness in your chest, the rise of frustration, the surge of ego. This pause, this awareness allows you to respond from clarity rather than impulse. Observation transforms confrontation from a battlefield into a laboratory where strategy and composure reign. The body is inseparable from the mind. If your posture collapses, your mind doubts itself. If your movements are hurried, your thoughts scatter. Control the body, and you control the mind. Stand grounded, shoulders relaxed, chest lifted, and movements deliberate. Engage muscles consciously, steady the voice, and synchronize presence with intention. Every controlled gesture sends a signal to your mind. You are calm, capable, and in command. Over time, this alignment between body and mind becomes instinctive. Tension loses its grip. Impulse is replaced by deliberation. Through the body, you assert control before words are even spoken. Silence is often more powerful than words. Most people rush to defend, to argue, to prove themselves. Silence, when intentional, pauses escalation, amplifies presence, and protects freedom of action. It forces reflection both for you and for the other person. Words spoken in haste cannot be taken back. Silence preserves choice. It communicates authority without aggression, signaling that you are not controlled by emotion or circumstance. It allows observation, discernment, and strategic response. In the space created by silence, clarity emerges, and your presence becomes unmistakable. Long-term power demands that we resist the urge to indulge ego. Ego thrives on immediate recognition, on winning arguments, on asserting dominance in the moment. It whispers that to pause is to lose, that to yield is to fail. But those who master confrontation understand that real strength lies in foresight, patience, and strategy. Ask yourself in every heated moment, will this matter tomorrow, next week, next year? Will reacting serve growth, influence, and respect, or will it satisfy a fleeting desire for dominance? Choosing long-term power over short-term ego transforms confrontation from a test of pride into an exercise in discipline. It is the ability to act with wisdom rather than impulse, to endure temporary discomfort in pursuit of lasting impact. Ego-driven reactions are short-sighted. They burn bridges, damage reputation, and waste energy. Choosing restraint preserves integrity, strengthens credibility, and reinforces influence. It allows the mind to operate from principle rather than reaction. It teaches humility without submission, strategy without weakness, and authority without aggression. By prioritizing long-term outcomes, you cultivate resilience and create opportunities that hasty impulses would destroy. Every act of restraint, every measured pause, every silent observation builds the architecture of power that endures far beyond the confrontation itself. Mastering calmness in confrontation is not about suppressing emotion. It is about channeling it. Anger can be energy, fear can be insight. Frustration can be focus, but only when the mind and body are aligned, when breath is controlled, when observation guides response, and when ego does not dictate action. Calmness is deliberate, intentional, and strategic. It is the ability to remain steady while others unravel, to assert influence without aggression, and to navigate challenges with precision, dignity, and strength. Every confrontation becomes not a threat, but an opportunity to demonstrate mastery over self and circumstance. When you cultivate this skill, confrontation no longer holds power over you. The storm may rage around you, insults may fly, accusations may pierce the air, yet within you are unmoved. Breath, observation, body control, silence, and the wisdom to prioritize long-term outcomes coalesce into an unshakable presence. The person who masters calmness does not merely survive confrontation. They command it. They dictate tempo, maintain clarity, and assert authority that words alone cannot convey. Calm becomes their signature, their weapon, and their advantage in every interaction. Mastering calmness is a lifelong practice. Every challenge, every disagreement, every provocation is a training ground. The first response is awareness. The second is breath. The third is observation. The fourth is alignment of body and mind. The fifth is strategic silence. The sixth is the discipline to act from long-term vision rather than immediate ego. Practiced repeatedly, these steps become instinctive. Calmness becomes second nature, a constant companion, and a source of unshakable strength. In every confrontation, you have a choice to react, to surrender to impulse, to feed the ego, and to lose control, or to pause, breathe, observe, align your body, remain silent, and act with wisdom. Each choice shapes not only the outcome of the moment, but the trajectory of your life. Calmness is not weakness, it is power. It is not passivity, it is mastery. It is not absence of emotion, it is the discipline to channel emotion toward deliberate action, toward measured influence, and toward lasting impact. When mastered, calmness transforms the individual. It allows presence to dominate chaos. It allows strategy to replace reaction. It allows influence to grow beyond immediate circumstance. It teaches patience, discipline, and resilience. It turns confrontation into an arena for growth, wisdom, and authority. Calmness is the hallmark of those who lead without aggression, influence without force, and navigate life with clarity, dignity, and strength. Most people believe that calmness is something you either have or you don't, as if it were a trait written into your personality at birth. They see calm people and think they are just naturally composed, while they see themselves reacting with frustration, anger, or panic and conclude that they are somehow flawed or weak. This is a misconception so deeply rooted that it prevents countless individuals from ever attempting to change. Calmness is not a lucky genetic lottery. Calmness is a skill, a muscle of the mind, and just like any other skill, it requires attention, discipline, and practice. It is not something you stumble upon or hope to inherit. It is something you earn moment by moment, choice by choice. To believe otherwise is to surrender to circumstances and allow life to dictate your reactions rather than taking command of them. The first step in understanding calmness as a skill is to recognize that every reaction is a choice, even if it feels automatic. Humans are wired to respond quickly to threats, to flash with anger when insulted, to tighten in fear when challenged. This fight or flight instinct is primal, and it serves an important function in survival. But survival instincts are not designed for modern life, where most threats are not physical predators, but words, opinions, and emotional pressure. The problem is that the human mind often interprets minor conflicts as life-threatening events, triggering the same stress response that it would to a wild animal in the forest. The key difference between those who appear naturally calm and those who do not is not some innate trait. It is the ability to step back from that instinct, to pause before responding, and to choose how to act instead of reacting blindly. This ability can be trained. Just as one trains a body to lift weights or run long distances, the mind can be trained to remain calm under pressure. It begins with awareness. You cannot develop calmness without noticing your own impulses and emotional triggers. When you feel irritation rising or tension building in a confrontation, the first thing to do is to recognize it. Acknowledge the sensation in your body, the tightening of your chest, the heat in your face, the urge to speak before thinking. This recognition is not passive. It is an active choice to notice what is happening within you. The moment you observe your own reaction, you create a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies the power to choose calmness instead of chaos. Once you have recognized the impulse, the next step is to engage techniques that reinforce control over your mind. Breath is the simplest and most accessible tool. Deep, measured breaths are more than a calming gesture. They are a signal to the nervous system to slow down, to disengage from the fight or flight mode that pushes you toward instant reaction. By deliberately controlling your breath, you remind yourself that you are the observer of the situation, not a slave to it. In the early stages of training, it may feel awkward or even ineffective, but repeated practice strengthens the association between breath and composure. Over time, the body begins to respond automatically, sending the same calming signals to the mind even before panic or anger has a chance to take hold. Another element of cultivating calmness is mental rehearsal. Athletes, speakers, and leaders all use visualization to prepare for stressful moments, imagining potential challenges and rehearsing measured responses. In confrontation, you can use the same principle. Mentally walk through scenarios where someone provokes you, imagines the rising tension, and practice responding with calmness, with steady speech, with controlled gestures. Repeated mental rehearsal rewires your brain to treat stressful situations not as emergencies, but as manageable events. Your mind learns the pattern, your nervous system adapts, and gradually the instinct to react impulsively diminishes. Beyond these techniques, cultivating calmness also requires a broader perspective on life. Calm people do not necessarily have fewer problems, but they view challenges differently. They understand that most confrontations are temporary, often rooted in misunderstanding, ego, or external pressures that have nothing to do with their self-worth. When you develop this mindset, you begin to see emotional triggers for what they are: signals that test your discipline, not threats to your existence. This shift in perspective does not come overnight. It is cultivated through reflection, self-awareness, and a conscious choice to value inner peace over short-term reactions. The practice of calmness also involves choosing your environment and influences. Surrounding yourself with people who escalate conflicts or who thrive on drama will naturally make it more difficult to maintain composure. Conversely, associating with individuals who model patience, self-control, and reason gives you constant reference points to emulate. Observing calm behavior in others provides proof that it is attainable, demonstrating that the skill of calmness is not theoretical, but practical, repeatable, and real. Ultimately, understanding calm as a skill transforms the way you approach life. It turns moments of potential chaos into opportunities for mastery. When you recognize that every confrontation is a chance to practice calmness, you stop fearing stress or pressure. Each instance becomes a training ground for your mind, a laboratory in which you strengthen your ability to remain steady, thoughtful, and effective. You begin to see that calmness is not passive, that it is not weakness, and that it does not require suppressing emotions. It requires managing them, directing them, and harnessing them in ways that serve your long-term goals rather than your immediate impulses. To master calmness, therefore, is to reclaim a form of freedom that most people never experience. It is the freedom to respond intentionally rather than react uncontrollably. It is the freedom to navigate conflict with clarity, dignity, and power. And because it is a skill, it is accessible to anyone who is willing to dedicate themselves to the practice, to the repetition, to the daily choice of observing, breathing, reflecting, and responding with deliberate calm. Calm is not a personality trait. It is a cultivated strength, a learned discipline, and a choice that anyone can make over and over again until it becomes second nature. In any confrontation, the first thing most people lose control of is not their words, not their actions, but their breath. It is the one thing that betrays your inner state before your mind even has a chance to intervene. When anger surges, your breathing becomes shallow, rapid, and irregular. When fear rises, your chest tightens, your inhale comes sharp and quick, and the instinctive reaction is to panic. Most people fail to realize that breath is not merely a biological function to sustain life. It is a bridge between the body and the mind, a conduit through which emotions manifest and energy flows. Learning to control your breath is the single most effective weapon you possess in any situation of tension, challenge, or confrontation. And yet it is so simple, so overlooked that it is often dismissed entirely. The reason breath is so powerful is because it directly communicates with the nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls involuntary responses, including heart rate, digestion, and stress reactions. When you are provoked, the sympathetic branch of this system, the part responsible for fight or flight, dominates. Your body prepares for immediate action, releasing adrenaline, tightening muscles, and accelerating your pulse. Shallow, rapid breathing reinforces this state, escalating tension and pushing the mind toward impulsive reactions. Conversely, deep, measured, conscious breathing engages the parasympathetic system, which calms the body, slows the heart rate, and restores equilibrium. By simply controlling your breath, you can bypass instinctive panic and assert command over your emotional state before any words are spoken. Most people underestimate the simplicity and accessibility of this tool. You do not need training, equipment, or preparation to breathe effectively. It is always available, and it responds immediately. When a conflict arises, your opponent may attempt to unsettle you, to provoke an emotional outburst or a hasty reaction, but you hold a secret advantage if you remember your breath. The moment you feel tension rising, you can slow it, deepen it, and control it. Inhale slowly through the nose, allowing your abdomen to expand. Hold it briefly, not as a strain, but as a pause. Exhale fully and deliberately through the mouth, emptying the lungs completely. Repeat this pattern until your body relaxes and your mind gains clarity. In these few seconds, the confrontation can shift. What once felt chaotic and threatening becomes manageable and under your command. Breath is also a weapon because it creates presence. When you control your breath, you control the rhythm of your body and, by extension, the rhythm of the interaction. A person who is breathing calmly projects steadiness. Their movements are deliberate, their tone measured, their posture grounded. Even before a word is spoken, they communicate control and resilience. This presence alone can disarm an opponent because confrontation is as much psychological as it is physical or verbal. People often escalate when they sense instability, uncertainty, or impatience. Breath control allows you to signal the opposite. It conveys that you are not rattled, that you are not a target to be manipulated, and that you are fully capable of responding on your terms. To master this weapon, it is not enough to use breath reactively. It must become a habit, practiced consistently outside of conflict. Start your day with intentional breathing exercises. Observe your breath during mundane tasks. Notice how it changes with emotion. Practice inhaling deeply through the nose, feeling the lungs fill completely, and exhaling fully, letting tension leave the body. This builds a baseline of awareness so that when the pressure of confrontation arrives, you do not need to think about breathing. It is already a part of your automatic response. The mind and body are trained to align, and in that alignment, calmness emerges naturally without struggle or effort. Breath is also a weapon because it connects you to the present moment. When conflict arises, the mind often races ahead, imagining worst case scenarios, replaying past grievances, or projecting future outcomes. Anxiety builds, and reactions become impulsive. Conscious breathing anchors you to the now. Every inhale draws attention to your immediate state. Every exhale releases distraction and tension. In the rhythm of controlled breath, the mind finds focus. You begin to see the situation clearly, unclouded by fear, anger, or ego. The clarity afforded by breath control is not theoretical. It allows for better judgment, sharper decision-making, and responses that are not merely reactive but strategic. There is also an energy aspect to breath that is often overlooked. Breath fuels your voice, your posture, and your ability to assert yourself without aggression. A person who speaks with shallow, rapid breaths will sound anxious, weak, and uncertain. A person who speaks from deep, controlled breathing commands attention. The voice carries confidence, authority, and calm power. Your words become precise, deliberate, and impactful, not rushed or defensive. Breath allows you to harness your physical presence, ensuring that your energy is measured and intentional rather than scattered by stress. Perhaps most importantly, the control of breath fosters resilience. Life is full of provocations, challenges, and conflicts. You cannot predict or avoid all of them, but you can always return to your breath. It is a constant, reliable anchor in a sea of uncertainty. By practicing this simple yet profound skill, you train yourself to respond to adversity with poise, to face pressure with composure, and to navigate confrontation not as a battlefield but as an arena in which your discipline and presence define the outcome. Becomes more than a physiological act. It becomes a declaration of self-mastery, a tool that shapes both your internal state and the way the world perceives you. Ultimately, those who master their breath do not merely survive confrontation. They influence it. They dictate the tempo, set the tone, and maintain clarity where others falter. While emotions rage and chaos threatens to consume those around them, they remain steady, grounded, and deliberate. Breath is the weapon that is always at your disposal, the tool that requires no effort to carry, yet produces results far greater than any external strategy or force. By learning to harness it, to treat it as the first line of defense and the first instrument of power, you transform the way you experience confrontation and, in doing so, elevate your entire approach to challenge, stress, and human interaction. Most people approach confrontation as a call to action. They feel the first spark of irritation or challenge, and without thinking, they respond. Words spill out, gestures flare, emotions escalate. The problem is not that people respond. It is that they respond automatically, driven by instinct, ego, or fear, without pausing to understand what is truly happening. To master confrontation, the first rule is deceptively simple: do not react. Observe. Watch. Take note of every detail before you decide how to act. Observation is the foundation of power because it separates you from the chaos, allowing you to act from clarity instead of impulse. Observation begins with the self. Before you can understand others, you must understand your own state. When provoked, notice what arises within you. Do you feel your heartbeat quicken, your jaw tighten, your thoughts racing with imagined insults or imagined victories? Most reactions occur because people are unaware of the internal processes driving them. When you pause and observe, even for a few seconds, you create a space, a neutral zone between stimulus and response. In that space lies choice. Without that pause, every word you speak and every action you take is dictated by reaction, which is often short-sighted, emotionally charged, and counterproductive. Observation transforms you from a participant in the storm to a calm center around which the storm swirls. Observation is also about watching the other person. Confrontation is rarely about logic, it is about emotion, projection, and power dynamics. Every gesture, every inflection, every pause reveals information if you are willing to notice it. Watch the tone of their voice. Is it rising with anger or is it steady? Observe posture, facial expressions, and micro movements. Do they lean in to dominate or do they shrink back in insecurity? Listen not only to the words being said, but also to what is left unsaid, to the tension beneath the sentences, to the motivations hidden behind accusations. By observing without immediate reaction, you gather intelligence. You understand not just the surface conflict, but the deeper currents driving it, and in understanding, you gain control. The discipline of observation requires humility. It requires letting go of the ego's demand to be right, to dominate, or to respond instantly. Most people react because they are desperate to assert themselves, to prove a point, or to defend their pride. But when you observe, you recognize that the need for instant validation is an illusion. Observing allows you to step back and recognize patterns. You begin to see that the other person is often reacting from their own fears, insecurities, and conditioning. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it allows you to respond with strategy rather than impulsive emotion. Observation transforms confrontation from a battle of wills into an opportunity to act with intelligence and restraint. Observation also trains patience. The first seconds of a confrontation often feel urgent. Your mind screams at you to react, to speak, to defend, to attack. Most people give in, and in doing so, they hand the initiative to the other person. When you observe, you delay reaction long enough to see the bigger picture. You notice how the situation evolves, how intentions clarify, and how the emotional intensity fluctuates. Patience through observation is a form of self-mastery. It teaches that you do not have to respond to every provocation. That timing is often more important than immediacy, and that silence is a tool far more powerful than most people realize. Observation is intimately connected with empathy. To observe fully, you must attempt to understand the other person's perspective, even if you do not agree with it. What are they seeking? What is driving their aggression or frustration? People often assume confrontation is about them personally, but most conflicts arise from the other person's internal struggles projected outward. By observing carefully, you separate the action from your self-worth. You see the situation as it is, not as a reflection of your value or identity. This perspective allows you to act strategically respond with clarity, and maintain composure while the other person may be trapped in reactive chaos. The power of observation lies not only in avoiding mistakes but also in creating opportunities. When you react impulsively, you close doors. You commit energy and words that cannot be taken back. When you observe, you preserve options. You watch, you learn, and you plan. You can respond in a way that shifts the dynamic in your favor, not by aggression, but by precision, calm, and awareness. Observation gives you insight into timing, tone, and approach. You see openings to escalate, to redirect, or to assert your position without losing composure. It allows you to transform confrontation from a threat into a controlled engagement in which you dictate the rhythm rather than being swept along by it. Observation is also about recognizing your limits. Not every confrontation requires a response, and not every provocation deserves engagement. By watching carefully, you learn to distinguish between what matters and what does not, between challenges that demand your energy and those that do not. This discernment is essential because it conserves mental and emotional resources. Most people waste time and energy reacting to every slight, every insult, and every challenge, leaving themselves drained and reactive. Observation teaches restraint, and restraint is the essence of strength. Finally, observation is a lifelong practice. It is not a technique to be used once and forgotten. Each confrontation, each challenge, each difficult interaction is a training ground for your observational skills. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes to pause, to notice, and to understand before responding. Over time, observation shapes your presence. People begin to notice your steadiness, your calm, your ability to navigate conflict without losing composure. They respond differently to you because they sense that you are not easily rattled, that you are present, aware, and deliberate. Observation transforms not only the way you handle confrontation, but also the way the world interacts with you. Many people underestimate the connection between the body and the mind. They assume that thoughts control actions, that the mind alone dictates behavior, and that physical posture or gestures are secondary to reasoning and emotion. This is a fundamental mistake because the body and mind exist in constant feedback, each influencing the other in ways that are often invisible until you lose control. When the body tightens in fear, the mind perceives danger. When posture collapses in weakness, the mind begins to doubt. When breathing is shallow, focus diminishes. Conversely, by controlling the body, you can influence the mind, redirecting emotion, sharpening clarity, and asserting calm in situations that might otherwise provoke chaos. Mastery over the body is not vanity or performance. It is strategy, discipline, and the foundation of mental strength. The first step in controlling the body is awareness. You must notice how tension manifests in physical form. Many people feel anxiety or anger as a sensation in the chest, the jaw, the stomach, or the shoulders. The body responds before the mind has processed the event, preparing for fight, flight, or freeze. If you do not recognize this tension, it will dictate your actions. Observing physical signals is the first act of control because it allows you to intervene before instinct overtakes reason. A steady mind begins with a steady body, and a steady body begins with awareness of its own signals. Once awareness is established, posture becomes a primary tool. The way you carry yourself sends a message to both yourself and others. Slumped shoulders, a dropped head, and inward gestures signal insecurity, fear, or indecision. Upright posture, grounded feet, relaxed shoulders, and a lifted chest communicate stability, confidence, and control. This is not about arrogance. It is about alignment. When the body is balanced, the mind mirrors that balance. The simple act of straightening the spine and centering the weight on the feet can reduce anxiety, clarify thinking, and prepare the body for measured action. Posture is a form of communication, first to yourself, then to the world, asserting that you are present, unshaken, and deliberate. Breath and movement are closely tied to physical control. The muscles must not be rigid, but neither should they be slack. Tension can paralyze thought, just as lethargy can weaken resolve. By consciously controlling movements, slow, deliberate, intentional gestures, you signal to your mind that it is safe to focus, safe to assess, and safe to respond rather than react. In martial arts, sports, and performance disciplines, athletes learn to move their bodies deliberately under pressure because movement shapes mental state. In daily life, controlling how you sit, stand, and gesture during confrontation has the same effect. Calm motion begets calm thought, and calm thought begets deliberate action. The control of the body also involves regulating physiological responses that often spiral out of conscious awareness. Heart rate, muscle tension, and even facial expressions can betray inner turmoil. Techniques such as grounding exercises, muscle relaxation, and focused breathing help regulate these responses. For instance, placing weight evenly on both feet, slightly bending the knees, and relaxing the jaw can signal to the brain that you are stable and capable, reducing impulsive emotional reactions. The body and mind are intertwined. When you take command of one, the other follows. Strengthening this connection is not instantaneous, but through repetition, it becomes instinctive, a silent infrastructure for mental resilience. Control over the body also encompasses micro behaviors that are often overlooked. The way you make eye contact, the steadiness of your hands, the tone of your voice, the pace of your speech. All of these are extensions of physical control that influence perception and decision-making. A steady hand conveys authority. A calm gaze communicates awareness, and measured speech signals confidence. These subtle signals do not merely affect the external environment, they reinforce internal stability. The brain interprets controlled physical cues as evidence of competence and calm, reducing panic and sharpening judgment. Physical mastery becomes a mirror that reflects mental mastery, reinforcing a cycle of composure and clarity. Physical conditioning is another element of body control that impacts the mind. Strength, flexibility, and endurance train not only muscles, but also focus, discipline, and patience. People who are physically trained have an intuitive understanding of effort, persistence, and recovery. This translates into mental resilience. When stress arises, a trained body does not flinch at discomfort. It remains steady. The mind learns from the body that tension can be tolerated, pressure can be managed, and challenges can be met without collapse. Physical training becomes mental rehearsal, a constant reminder that strength is not only possible, but habitual. Control over the body extends even to the subtle interplay between energy and presence. A person who moves quickly, with jerky or reactive motions, broadcasts instability, even if internally calm. A person who moves with intention, hands relaxed, shoulders grounded, steps measured, projects control and invites respect. This projection feeds back into the mind, reinforcing a sense of competence and authority. Controlling physical energy is about more than appearance. It is about shaping perception, asserting presence, and aligning internal state with external signal. The body, when consciously managed, becomes a weapon of clarity, resilience, and influence. The culmination of body control is integration posture, breath, movement, muscle relaxation, and energy awareness functioning together as a single system. When these elements are synchronized, the mind operates with unprecedented clarity. Emotional triggers lose their automatic grip. Panic and impulsivity diminish. Observation becomes easier. Strategic responses replace reactive ones. The body provides the foundation for the mind to function at its highest level, even under pressure. The individual who masters the body is not merely reacting to circumstances. They are shaping them, influencing both internal state and external reality. Through deliberate attention to the body, every confrontation, challenge, or stressful moment becomes a test of mastery rather than a threat to composure. The body, when controlled, guides the mind, regulates emotions, and asserts presence. It becomes the first line of defense, the silent messenger of resilience, and the framework upon which calm, deliberate thought can be built. In confrontation, most people feel compelled to speak. The instant a provocation arises, the mind races for a response, the mouth forms words, and the ego insists on proving itself, asserting dominance, or defending against perceived attack. This reflex is so ingrained that silence is often mistaken for weakness, for indecision, or for submission. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. Silence is not emptiness. It is a weapon, a shield, and a tool of immense power when wielded intentionally. It is one of the few responses in life that cannot be anticipated, manipulated, or misinterpreted. And when understood, it shifts the dynamics of any confrontation in ways that words rarely can. The first aspect of silence as strength is its ability to pause escalation. Most conflicts spiral because both parties feed off each other's reactions. Words provoke words, emotions trigger emotions, and before long, logic and reason are lost in a storm of impulse. By choosing silence, you break the pattern. You refuse to feed the cycle. In those moments, silence is not empty. It is deliberate, conscious, and commanding. It signals that you are not controlled by the provocation, that you are observing rather than reacting, that you have the inner discipline to maintain composure while the world attempts to drag you into chaos. Silence creates a pause that allows thought to enter where reaction would have otherwise dominated. Silence also amplifies presence. In a room where everyone is talking, arguing, or attempting to assert themselves, the person who remains calm and quiet becomes instantly noticeable. The eyes, the tone, the body language, all are amplified when words are absent. People instinctively focus on the silent individual, scanning for cues, searching for meaning. This shift in attention is powerful because it places control subtly in your hands. While others act, react, or escalate, you maintain clarity, choosing not only what to say, but whether to say anything at all. Silence forces others to confront their own behavior, their own aggression, or their own assumptions in a way that words often cannot. Another dimension of silence is the protection it affords. Words once spoken cannot be taken back. They carry weight, implication, and consequence. Reacting in haste often produces regret, miscommunication, or escalation. Silence, on the other hand, preserves freedom. By withholding an immediate response, you maintain the ability to act strategically rather than emotionally. You buy time to process, to evaluate, and to choose the most effective course of action. In this way, silence is not avoidance. It is deliberate restraint, a conscious decision to maintain integrity, clarity, and composure in the face of pressure. Silence also communicates power without aggression. Most people equate speaking, arguing, or raising their voice with authority. But true authority often lies in the ability to remain quiet. Silence conveys confidence, self-possession, and mastery over impulses. It shows that you do not need to prove yourself with words, that your strength is internal and does not require external validation. This form of communication is subtle, but it is extraordinarily effective. It challenges assumptions, unsettles egos, and commands attention precisely because it is unexpected in a culture that equates noise with power. Observational silence is another layer. By remaining quiet, you open the opportunity to watch and understand. When the other party speaks, you gain insight into their motivations, emotional state, and reasoning. Each word, each hesitation, each gesture becomes data. You can detect inconsistencies, recognize patterns, and anticipate moves. Silence allows you to absorb the full scope of the situation, building a comprehensive understanding that would be impossible if you were caught up in reactive speech. In this sense, silence is not emptiness. It is preparation, intelligence, and awareness in motion. Silence also forces reflection, both for yourself and for others. In the heat of confrontation, people often speak to fill gaps, to assert control, or to defend ego. By refusing to respond hastily, you create space for reflection. The other party begins to consider their words, their tone, and their approach because they are met not with reaction but with stillness. Meanwhile, your own mind benefits from the pause, as it can assess the situation objectively, evaluate outcomes, and determine whether response is necessary or whether restraint is the more powerful choice. There is a profound psychological dimension to silence as well. Human beings are often uncomfortable with it. When someone remains quiet in the face of provocation, it creates a subtle tension. The expectation that every challenge must be met with words is disrupted, and in that disruption, power shifts. Silence becomes a signal that you are not trapped by the dynamics of the confrontation, that your inner state is sovereign, and that you are not participating in a battle that does not serve you. In this way, silence destabilizes those who rely on reaction and impulse to assert control, giving you quiet authority over the interaction. Silence also teaches emotional mastery. To remain quiet when provoked, insulted, or challenged requires control over pride, anger, and fear. It is a deliberate exercise in discipline, a conscious act of choosing presence over impulsivity, wisdom over ego. Every moment of silence is a rehearsal for mastery, building resilience that will extend beyond the confrontation itself into every area of life where patience observation, and composure are required. Finally, silence is a tool of strategy. Not every moment requires a response, and not every provocation requires engagement. By choosing when to speak and when to remain silent, you direct the tempo of interactions. You decide which battles are worth entering and which are not. You maintain energy, focus, and clarity while the world around you reacts in haste and emotion. The decision to remain silent is not passive. It is a proactive stance, a deliberate choice to wield control through absence, through presence, and through measured observation. Ego is the loudest voice in the room when confrontation arises. It demands to be heard, insists on immediate recognition, and craves instant validation. It thrives on proving itself right, on winning arguments, on asserting dominance in every small interaction. Most people are unaware of how much of their energy is consumed by this relentless internal force. They react, they speak first, they attack, they defend, all because the ego whispers that to yield, to pause, or to restrain is to lose. But life is not measured in fleeting victories. True influence, true strength, and lasting power are not found in the immediate satisfaction of ego. They are cultivated over time, in the deliberate choice to prioritize long-term outcomes over short-term impulses, in the restraint that allows vision to guide action rather than reaction. The challenge with ego is that it feels urgent. When insulted, ignored, or challenged, the ego screams that you must respond immediately, that every slight is a threat to your identity, and that failure to act is failure itself. Most people surrender to this pressure, and in doing so, they trap themselves in cycles of conflict, regret, and reactive decision-making. Every impulsive retort, every defensive gesture, every attempt to prove oneself chips away at long-term objectives. Choosing long-term power means recognizing that not every battle is worth fighting, that not every provocation demands an immediate response, and that restraint is not weakness, but strategic strength. Long-term power is built on vision, patience, and self-control. It is the ability to see beyond the immediate moment, to recognize the consequences of each action before taking it. The ego reacts to emotion, while the mind guided by long-term vision responds to principle. When confronted, ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow, next week, or next year? Will this reaction contribute to growth, respect, and influence? Or will it merely satisfy the fleeting desire to assert dominance in the moment? By framing choices in the context of long-term impact, you elevate your decision, making from reactive to strategic. Every action becomes intentional, every word measured, and every response a step towards sustained influence rather than temporary satisfaction. Choosing long-term power also requires humility. Ego convinces you that you must always be right, that surrendering a point is failure, and that yielding is shameful. Yet, the strongest individuals recognize that humility is not submission. It is leverage. By letting go of the need to dominate every interaction, you conserve energy, maintain focus, and build credibility. People respect those who control their impulses more than those who cannot. They notice restraint, calm, and strategic thinking. Choosing long-term power over short-term ego means understanding that influence grows not through immediate assertion, but through consistent demonstration of wisdom, patience, and composure. Another key aspect is the understanding of consequences. The ego is short-sighted, focused on immediate gratification, immediate recognition, or immediate revenge. Long-term power considers ripple effects. Words spoken in anger can damage relationships, tarnish reputation, or close opportunities. Actions taken impulsively may satisfy pride in the moment, but create lasting challenges later. By prioritizing long-term power, you think several steps ahead, anticipate outcomes, and navigate life with strategy rather than emotion. This foresight is not innate. It is cultivated through practice, reflection, and repeated choice. Every moment of restraint strengthens the muscle of foresight, making you more capable of achieving goals without unnecessary conflict. Choosing long-term power over ego also transforms personal relationships. Those who act impulsively often burn bridges, alienate allies, and create enemies. Those who choose measured responses build trust, respect, and loyalty. In professional, social, and personal contexts, long-term power allows influence to grow organically. The individual who can resist the immediate urge to assert themselves becomes someone others rely on for reason, judgment, and perspective. This is the essence of power that lasts, power that cannot be taken away by fleeting emotion, criticism, or provocation. Self-mastery is inseparable from this choice. Ego is a natural force, and controlling it requires awareness and practice. The first step is noticing when the ego is driving your thoughts or actions. The next is pausing, taking a breath, and asking whether the immediate reaction serves your greater objectives. This pause, even for a few seconds, is transformative. It interrupts automatic responses, creates space for reason, and allows the mind to align with long-term vision rather than fleeting emotion. Over time, this practice rewires the mind, reducing the dominance of ego and reinforcing discipline, foresight, and composure. Choosing long-term power also involves embracing discomfort. The ego wants comfort, instant recognition, and validation. True power, however, is often uncomfortable. It requires patience, sacrifice, and the ability to endure temporary criticism or misunderstanding in pursuit of a larger objective. Those who chase short-term gratification may feel momentary victory, but they forfeit the depth, influence, and resilience that come from disciplined action. By prioritizing long-term outcomes, you build character, credibility, and authority that endures beyond the moment. Finally, choosing long-term power over short-term ego transforms the perception of success. Short-term ego measures success in wins, arguments, and recognition. Long-term power measures success in legacy, influence, and consistent alignment with purpose. It is the difference between shouting to be heard and speaking with impact, between reacting to every slight and navigating life with strategic mastery. Every confrontation, every provocation, every challenge becomes an opportunity to reinforce long-term objectives rather than indulge temporary impulses. By mastering this choice, you shape not only your interactions, but your trajectory in life, cultivating a form of strength that is enduring, resilient, and undeniable